Sun is just now beginning to come up early in the morning. I want to take you on a huge garden tour. We're going to start way down at the big garden. I'll show you what's going on down there. We'll come back up by Granny's garden, and then we'll come back up here to the gardens that surround our house here in the mountains of Appalachia. You can see the big garden really good from this vantage point. The corn is looking great, the beans, potatoes, everything's looking good. The reason we call it the big garden, if you've never watched our videos before, this is the garden that Pap grew, my daddy and my mother, Pap and Granny, when I was growing up. And at that time, it was the only garden. Over the years, after me and Matt was married and we started gardening, we had like a little garden at our house where we kind of grew tomatoes and squash, things like that. Granny and Pap did the same at their house, and then the big garden we planted all in beans and corn and sometimes potatoes, and we all worked in it together and we shared it. So somehow over the years we just started calling it the big garden, and then the gardens at each of our houses were the little gardens. Over the years, mine and Matt's little gardens have got rather large. We've had some grading done and took up some of the grass, and instead decided to grow food, especially as our daughters, Katie and Corey, got older. Of course, they're grown today and they needed less room to play. We took up the yard and started growing more food. Right in front of the bigger garden, we have some giant piles of wood chips that we'll be able to utilize in next year and in the coming years even. Granny had some tree work done, and the gentlemen were really kind. They dumped all of the small stuff that they chipped up right here so that we could use it in the future. It smells like a Christmas tree down here. A lot of it was pine. This is a good view of the corn. You can see the taller corn back there in the back is our first planting. This smaller stuff up in the front is our second planting of corn we did. It all looks really good. This smaller corn needs to be weeded. That's on our list to do. But I think the other corn, the back corn, we've laid it by. We probably won't do anything else to it and just hope for a good harvest. On this side over here of the garden is our two big long rows of potatoes. And then right here in the front is some bush beans that we've actually already harvested from, already picked beans one time from them. So I hope they continue to produce for us, especially those, as you can see, as it goes on out further. They get kind of puny out there. We had to replant those, so those are not as large as the ones we planted in the beginning. We thought about planting more corn, another succession of corn right here in this bare space, or maybe planting some field corn. What we grow is Silver Queen, so it's a white sweet corn. We've done neither of those, and we probably won't at this stage. Probably won't do anything with this part this year. On the very far side of the potatoes is where we have some okra growing. You can see there. This in this end looks the best. Again, it kind of peters out as it goes back that way. We had so much heavy rain and the water just kind of washes from that end, so that's what happened to some of our seeds that we had to replant. I didn't replant any of the okra though, but the ones on the further end are much smaller than these. But hopefully they'll, as summer goes on, they'll continue. And usually with okra, we have it producing all the way up until frost, all the way up until we're sick of it, basically, until we've put all we want in the freezer and ate it. And if you grow okra, you know you can barely keep it cut once it starts producing for you. So the sun's beginning to come up in the holler now. Let's run up to Granny's and check out her garden. If you followed us for a long time, you'll remember that we had the big trees cut off this bank that was shading the big garden before we started planting in it again. And you can see how tall some of the poplars have already grown. Lots of weeds and stuff too, but poplars and sweet gums have already shot back out, and some of them are taller than I am already. I forgot to mention, out there in the very end of the garden, you may have seen some stuff growing. That is mostly Corey's stuff, so that's why I didn't go all the way out there. She's got some squash and zucchini, some onions, and then some beans growing on a trellis. Just behind the beans, there's some blackberries and some grapes that's left over from when my brother Steve lived here, and he planted those. Granny's little garden is doing good. You can see one of our deer alarms right there. If I set it off, we'll get to hear it. Her potatoes are kind of through blooming and dying back. She's got some lima beans that are not producing yet, but they're full of bloom, so I know they will. Her tomatoes look great there in the cages. Then on this end, she's got some cornfield beans and some onions growing. She's been eating the onions, and when she pulls up an onion, she gets Paul to put a pea back in its place. So she's just, as she harvests, she's trying to plant more. Granny loves to garden. That's where I got my great love of gardening, is from her and Pap. And this other little section of garden Granny's got is where her peas are, and they're just beginning to reach the trellis there in the back. She has had something nibbling on these in the front, but those in the back are just reaching the trellis now, and some on the end here. Granny's had these blueberry bushes for ages, and normally they produce a little bit, but this year they're just loaded down with berries, loaded down. And I think they're doing so much better because of those trees we did have cut, allow so much more sunshine. You wouldn't think, or I wouldn't think, I didn't realize, I guess is how I should say it, how much those trees there were also shading this garden. I was only thinking about them shading the big garden, but they were also shading Granny. So these blueberries are just outdoing themselves this year. Our blueberries are looking really good this year too, and they're just now, some of them here and there, beginning to get ripe. Look at those. Me and Ira's been coming out here and eating some of them. I hate to even eat them now. He likes them so much. But as you can see, there's plenty more coming on. A really good example of us living on the north side, and if you watch our videos, you know we talk about not having much sunshine. Where I just come from in the big garden, you've seen all that sun, and now I've just walked just back up the hill to my house. There was sunshine in Granny's yard too, and you can see there's not any here. It just takes the sun longer to get over the ridge to actually shine down on our gardens than it does to shine in those places that are not on the north-facing slope of the mountain. And amazingly, I mean, that's the amazing part. It's not like I'm a mile back up the mountain. I'm just a little bit. That's why, as a gardener, I love talking about the little microclimates. Even though I'm right here by Granny's house, if she was in the yard, I could yell and say, "Hey, how you doing?" I could do the same for Corey. Their gardens, their little garden areas are different than mine, just because I'm just this little bit up the mountain, just a little bit. So the sun doesn't shine as much here as it does down there. Really fascinating to notice all those little differences. This is one of our raised beds on the bank here, and you can see what we've got planted in it is white sweet potatoes, and they're growing. We've only had them planted a week or two, so that's why they look so small. But they do have new growth on them, so I know they're going to be okay. I hope they're going to be okay. Just below them there in that bed is some walking Egyptian onions. So I'm really excited to have that bed completely took over by those onions. We really enjoy them. They will last through the winter. We can enjoy them all winter long. So that was my goal, I don't know, a year or two ago, I guess, and I've achieved it now. So it's really wonderful for us to have those. This is the little flower bed outside my kitchen window. You can see the hostas are still blooming, but they're kind of fading out. The love in the mist is totally faded out there, and those seed pods will open up and drop out, and I'm just going to leave them there. We've got some cosmos blooming, which are really beautiful. Such a pretty color. The poppies are finished blooming. These are the poppies I planted in the snow, our one snow we had during the winter. I think this part is really attractive too. I think that's pretty. Now, as they begin to fade away, this one up here, they don't look as pretty. And these will get dry out, and you'll be able to shake them, and you can just hear the seeds in them. So if you wanted to spread them to somewhere else or share your seeds with someone else. A lot of folks feel that poppies can be invasive, and I guess they could be if it's a place they really, really love. These have been lovely this year, the cone flowers. Look how tall they are too. They're about as tall as I am. They're so pretty, and they've been blooming a good while now. So, and more to bloom, more on the way, but they've been really, really pretty. And the bees and the insects have really enjoyed them. Just below that, tucked down under the coneflower, is some Love in the Mist. Isn't it a pretty little flower? It just is. It's unique. You can see there's the seed pods. Now it spreads. It has spread pretty good for me too, so it might be another one that you might think about where you put it, but really pretty. There's still a few poppies here and there that are blooming. There's one. Tucked way back here in the back is some candy tuft there. I think that's what it's called. Some more cosmos, and then here we have a volunteer tomato plant. This one usually grows in this flower bed, and it's flower bed. Here's some tomatoes. I was going to tell you what they look like, but there you can see. They're just teeny tiny. It's Matt's wild cherry, very flavorful and sweet, just very, very tiny. And here's a little bitty coneflower back here. Next year it'll probably be as large as that other one. These hostas are also blooming. I love hostas because of their leaves. Now all of these need to be divided desperately, but their blooms are okay. They're pretty, but then once they start looking kind of raggedy, I usually go and cut off all of their blooms. And the leaves at this stage of the summer is already looking kind of raggedy too. But the bees enjoy them too. Up there on the bank is where in that bed on the bank, looks like it's kind of falling down. That's where our blackberries are. And they've been, I can see several that's ripe right now. Ira also loves those. But they've not been as good as they usually are this year. I've noticed a lot of wild ones though. Those are tame ones, and then we have wild ones everywhere. The wild ones seem like they've done better this year than the tame ones. Here's some dahlias that I planted from a tuber. Oh look, there's a little bloom. I can't wait to see what they look like. They're getting pretty tall. I planted more than those though, and apparently the others didn't come up. On this trellis is where we have some beans and some grapevines on the other end. The grapevines right here don't have any grapes on them this year. I don't know if one of our late frost got them or if this is just a bad year. Our other grapes, the ones down at Steve's, and then we have 2 other established grapevines. They are doing great this year. So I'm not sure what happened to this one. The bean that we're growing on this little trellis is one that I grew, greasy beans. Me and Matt grew it. I shared the seeds with my friend Ed, and then he grew it, and it kind of turned a different color. So then he sent me back some seeds so that I could see what it does for me. Now look right here, there's some beans. So we're getting to the point where we can see. So he calls them Tipper's beans, but I'm calling them Ed's beans. So there's our first indication of what they're going to be. I'll let them get fuller than that though before we see how they do. Underneath the grapevines here, I planted some onions that a lovely subscriber shared with us. They're called Tom onions, and they're supposed to multiply. So my hopes is that eventually they would take over this little part right here, and we would have another source of multiplying onions. Different than the Egyptian, but still multiplying onions. We have several raised beds on the bank. We have another one with sweet potatoes in it. I missed the ones with garlic, but I've showed those before. We have 2 with garlic, which is doing good. Amazing garlic always amazes me. For one thing, I love it. We eat a lot of garlic. But the other thing is, me and Matt planted it last November, and here it is still growing. That's just amazing. But this is the only raised beds, these 2 on the bank, that we have a trellis on here. So in this we have some, this looks so good. These beds were looking kind of pitiful for a while, but they look so great now. So we have peas back here in the back. This is it's a Holstein pea. So it's an heirloom pea. It's black and white. It tastes very similar to black-eyed peas. So I'm excited. We've grew it for several years now. Debbie at Bryson Farm Supply, before it closed in in Silva. I always get the Bryson and the Bryson City confused. In Silva, before it closed, she shared that seed with us, and we really like it. So we've grew it about every year since then. And then we have some peppers. Let's see. Oh, here's some. Here you go. I think those are the Marconi. So we'll probably wait till that turns color. Here's a little one that I don't remember what it is, but once it grows, I will. Here's one of our shishitos there. And of course you can eat peppers when they're green. You don't have to wait for them to turn. So these are all looking great. The peppers have really loved this hot weather that we're having, I know. Some little bitty ones down in there. That looks like a habanada, which is a sweet pepper, a sweet variety, not a hot one. And then we're really excited about these peas. Don't they look great? This is the pea that Robert Ritchie shared with us, and I read that wonderful story about where the seed come from, and so we just can't wait to see if they do good for us. Another heirloom pea. This pepper looks really great, but that little one, I don't know, do we plant two right together? That's kind of, oh, that's not a pepper, that's a pea. It's got out of the aisle, as we would say. It's not where it should be. That pepper looks really pitiful. Here's another one with big peppers on it. Looks great. More. Oh, and here's a shishito that's beginning to turn there. And there's some of them. So excited about that. Last year our peppers did not do good, so it'll be wonderful to have these this year. Having to run to beat the sunshine now. Once the sun starts on the camera, it's hard for you to see. It blows everything out. This back part of our garden is just looking wonderful. It's been one of my favorite places for the last 3 or 4 years, just because it seemed so lush. I am still fighting the dreaded squash bugs in our cucumbers though, and I've still not made my pepper spray. That's my own fault. There's nobody to blame but me. Maybe today's the day I'll actually make it. That's the only thing so far that we've found for us that works. I've tried everything. Everybody tells me pretty much I try it. This year, a lot of people have told me about the cinnamon sticks. I have so many cinnamon sticks out here, it smells like a bakery. So I'm certainly trying that. But so far, either just picking them off by hand, which I do every day, a few times a day, I try to, and also the pepper spray. Those are the two things that have worked. The thing with the pepper spray is it seems like you've got to put it on every 3 or 4 days. You just got to stay on top of it. And which is hard to do if you have a real busy life, you know that. It's hard to do. But let's take a closer look over there. Maybe we won't see no squash bugs. This has been a really bright spot in the garden. Actually, this whole little area of flowers. You can see there's still some poppies blooming here, and the bees just love them. Look at this. Let me step up here. Look at that color there with the bees. Isn't that beautiful? So pretty. And see, you can see these are, they're kind of attractive just because they're unique. Of course, they're not as pretty as the blooms. We have some salvia that's about finished blooming. And there's a different kind of poppy there, a different color. It's pretty too, but it's just kind of hiding down in there. The bees are just having a heyday. Those are honeybees. They really love these poppies. There's some other little tiny bees down in there. That looks like a sweat bee maybe. Some kind of pollinator. But I've especially loved these old random pots that I said I was going to plant in honor of all the women in Appalachia that I've been to their houses where they were growing, maybe they were growing them in a country, growing plants on their porch, like maybe in a country crock, a little tub, maybe in a coffee can, in an old beat up something. I was thinking of course, Granny and my Mama Marie, but also of Mary Jane Queen. And it's just turned out so beautiful. These are impatiens that Corey got me recently. So you can see they're starting to bloom. They're going to be really pretty. And then the begonias are just outdoing themselves. And then I can't even remember what the name of this one is. Maybe verbena. And one of you will know. So you can leave it in the comments. Only thing's not doing good is the little marigold there. It's kind of pitiful. Maybe it needs more sunshine. I probably should move it. So pretty though. I've really, really enjoyed this part. Have some coleus down in there hiding. This was a foxglove. I hope it'll reseed itself because it was happy there and come back next year. And then we've got more coneflowers out here. I was hoping I had a red one out here last year, but this is not red, so maybe the red one died out, or I started to say maybe that was it, but that's a pink one too. Right here, some dahlias that I planted. I got these from Betty and Pat. They're so pretty in this container. It's been a really bright spot too. I just love it. Here's a coneflower that has somehow got into my herb bed, so maybe that'll be the red one. We'll see. I've got some basil, and this is a big ground cherry that's just reseeded itself in there. Some sage, some parsley, cilantro, a lot of dill coming on, and some bigger dill. This beautiful plant, I got it from Betty and Pat at Satterfield's a couple of years ago, and it's hyssop, and I just love it. And the bees love it too. It's just now kind of starting to bloom, but it will just be covered in bees. And it's a medicinal plant, but we've never used it for anything. We've not never tried to use it for anything, but it's beautiful, and the bees love it. There's a big weed right in the middle of it. Get rid of that one. So in these two raised beds with the hoop, that's where we've got our cucumbers growing. Here's some more of the dahlias. This one doesn't look as pretty as the other one, but it had some bug damage, but it's kind of coming back out now, so hopefully. Let me get rid of that one. Dead head while I'm walking you around. I can't resist doing a little bit of work, but hopefully it will come on now that it's looking better. In behind on this side of the bed here, we have some peppers. These are some of our hot peppers. So we've already been harvesting jalapenos. And I have some cayenne somewhere, but I don't see it right here. It may be in the front part, or that may be it right there. Yep, there it is. You can see there. Actually, I don't know still if that's the cayenne. We planted one or two, and this is not cayenne, I don't think, because there's a different one, of a one that someone sent us, Marchant, I don't know how you say it, and they thought Matt would love it. It was hot, so that may be that one. We did put all of the hot ones down here, though, so it is a hot variety. Matt and Austin like hot peppers, the rest of us not so much. This is our volunteer squash that I've been letting grow, and I showed it in a recent video, and I said I didn't know what it was. I thought at first it was going to be a pumpkin. I still think it's might be a Cherokee pumpkin. I don't know, but a lot of people, anyway, you can see one right there, said maybe it was a eggplant. Could it be an eggplant? I don't think so, because we don't eat eggplant. It's just not something we like, and we don't grow eggplant. So I don't think so. I don't think that's what it was. The only time I've grew an eggplant, and when it grew one eggplant, I give it to Miss Cindy, but it was because Austin's sister had to grow plants for a school project, and then she didn't. After that project was over, they don't have a garden, so she wasn't going to, plant anything. That was when Corey and Austin was dating a long time ago. So Corey brought all the plants home, and we planted them. One of them was an eggplant. And I think it grew one eggplant, and Miss Cindy did like eggplants, so I give it to her. So we'll just have to wait and see if it... And sometimes things can cross-pollinate, so the volunteer, I know it come from our compost, because we added compost to it, but it could be, some crossed-up squash, and I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm thinking it's going to turn a tan color, but I may be wrong. We'll see. So here's the cucumbers that we've been harvesting from already. Right there's a little bitty one. I could get that and eat it. If you notice these kind of leaves here, that's part of my trying to get rid of the squash bugs. This is our horseradish plant right beside it. And I don't know, one day I was out here trimming back leaves, and I just thought, what the heck, I'll just stick them on here and see if that makes any difference. There's one. I've put some of my herbs down here. You'll read often that they don't like the scent of this or that, but I don't know. It's one of those things. Someone the other day said I'd showed this little weed up there in the garden and said I couldn't remember what the name of it was, and I don't know how it got here. I'm sure I brought it with some kind of plant, maybe those blackberries. I love watching a little ant. There's a little, whoops. Anyway, I couldn't remember the name of it, but it spreads. I looked it up on the internet when I first noticed it, because it spreads so fast. It starts setting seeds when it's tiny and drops them. That's how it spreads. Anyway, I said, well, I've forgotten what it is. Well, someone in the comments said it's mulberry weed. And I said, yeah, that's what it is. But it was funny in their comment. They said it's mulberry weed, but someday we'll be in heaven and there'll be no mulberry weed. So they've been fighting it too. So I guess that's how I feel about the squash bugs. I just have to take hope in that knowledge. Look at that little bitty cucumber, little tiny one. The flowers in front of the greenhouse has not been as pretty as they usually are this year, but I keep reminding myself summer's not over. So these begonias here are really pretty, but they're just not doing as good as those over there that I showed you. And then the calendula, of course, is always beautiful. Calendula is really easy for me to grow, so if you have trouble growing stuff, maybe you could plant some calendula and see if it is for you. And then on this side, the petunias here, they've just not been as, you can see this kind and that kind, they're just not being as full of blooms as usual. Now these in the back look nice, but I don't know what happened to those. I've got, this is just a calendula that reseeded itself there. Look at that pretty nasturtium. This is some rosemary, some more coleus, and these are some calendula. It's not blooming yet. Another dahlia that, again, is fighting its way back from bug damage. And I don't remember what that's called, but isn't it lovely? Just so pretty. So pretty. And this is some candy tuft I planted. The nasturtiums have been lovely. Look at this one. It's so pretty. I just love them. I love their blooms. I love their flowing leaves. And they're edible. The whole thing is edible. They have real spicy, like almost think of a radish, but more spicier than that. That's the flavor of them. So some people like them and some people do not. They also have medicinal qualities. And we have Corey made us some tincture from them that's supposed to be almost like an antibiotic. It is vile. It tastes horrible, but it does seem to help. This is a different color of the nasturtium. Isn't that pretty? On this side, here's some cucumbers. Look at that teeny tiny one. If you notice any of the red, like on the leaves, again, that's me being lazy, not wanting to make the pepper spray and just putting the pepper out here. And you can see it doesn't do any good because there's one of my friends, I see. And there's more. This is I said I should just bring a chair and sit out here so I can watch for them. Well, at least I got 2 of them while I was talking to you. And there's another one. So pepper spray is going to have to happen today. But overall, they look beautiful. There's more cucumbers on that side, just now starting to climb up. And this is the big volunteer squash. And the front side of that bed full of cucumbers and nasturtiums are some tomatoes, a lot of tomatoes. That's the Matt's cherry that reseeds itself too. I probably shouldn't have left that many, but I did. And they're full of tomatoes. So I've trimmed them back some, but I hate to just pull them all up at this stage. So I probably should have done that in the beginning though. Over here is our 2 humongous squash and zucchini that I planted way too early, but I'm so glad I did it because look at them, they're beautiful. And we've been eating a lot of squash and a lot of zucchini just from those plants. I planted nasturtiums in the green stalk. You can see how pretty they are. Not all of them come up though. I've got 2 or 3 pockets there that don't have anything in them. I've planted more. These nasturtiums have already started setting seeds, so I just pulled some seeds off and put them in there. Maybe they'll come up. But eventually this one will just take over the whole thing anyway. It's so pretty. This lower part of the bed is where we have our Cherokee purples. We don't have any ripe yet, but we have plenty of tomatoes, so that's really great. In the front, over this arch, is where I say we plant Malabar spinach, but actually we just planted it and it continues to come back every year for us. So you can see it there starting to climb up the trellis. So I have 2 varieties of elderberry, and I can't remember what neither one of them is, so I can't tell you. Here's some that's already finished blooming here. Then the variety right beside it is a different variety, and I didn't think it had any blooms on it until I noticed one right back here, so it's just blooming later than that one. I've not grown elderberry for very long, just a couple of years, so I'm still learning about it. One of them has decided to grow very, very tall up there. I wanted to grow elderberry because of the medicinal properties in it. Miss Cindy, Matt's mother, really made me a believer in elderberry. Years and years ago, she started buying us elderberry, especially during the winter, to bulk up our immune system against flus and colds and things like that, or to take, if we got sick, to really take a lot of it at one time to help us, and it just worked. I just become a believer. Of course, we were just taking the supplements, and then years later, Corey learned how to make like a tonic out of elderberry. You've probably seen a lot of people making that online, and then you just take a tablespoon of it or a teaspoon of it or whatever you want to do. You'd have to decide that for yourself, and it does the same thing, just boost your immune system. It's funny, when I first started wanting to plant them, and I did plant them, my friend Jim Casta said, "Tipper, why in the world did you plant them when they're everywhere?" And I said, well, I can't find them. I know they are. I don't doubt that they're here. But by the time I asked Pap to help me find them was when he was more sick, and he just didn't feel like getting out and helping me find them. I asked Farmer Tim down the road. He's like, I don't know what that is. So he couldn't show me. But I swear, as soon as I planted these, me and Corey noticed some easy to get to right off the road that we live on, and it was just, we were just like, got a good life out of it. I was like, so I've just been, like Jim said, driving by them every day of my life, my whole life practically. But we did harvest those. Corey did. Let's see, that would have been before she had Woodrow. I can't remember how many years ago it's been. Then last year, for some reason, those down the road didn't have any berries on them. But I've looked at them this year, and it looks like it's going to be a good year for them, so maybe we can get those again. And now I've got them right here in my yard, which is convenient. This is one of our asparagus beds. One of my goals this year was to keep the asparagus beds cleaned out. Now, this one just had weeds in it and briars. The one over there is where the terrible pesky weed grows, or it's not a weed, it's some kind of herb. I don't even know what it is, but I've managed to do it so far, if I can just keep it up the rest of the summer. This one, though, you can see there's some potatoes growing. We planted potatoes here last year and harvested them, but we didn't put anything back here this year. We just didn't plant anything. But you can see, obviously, we missed some of the potatoes that we were harvesting last year, and so we inadvertently grew potatoes, and they look pretty good. This is the bed that we have our Tommy toes in. Look back through there, lots of Tommy toes, but none ripe yet. Here's more right here. More right here. And if you don't know, if you've never heard the term Tommy toe before, that's what we call small tomatoes like this. Some people call them grape tomatoes, salad tomatoes, but we call them Tommy toes here in the mountains of Appalachia. And I can't wait for them to get ripe. Matt calls them yard snacks because he can just come out here and stand beside one and eat. This bed is the asparagus bed, our more established asparagus bed, or the one we've had for the longest time. That other one's pretty established too, but this is the one we've had for the longest time. You can see I planted some sunflowers in there several years ago now, and they just reseed themselves every year. So you can see, talk about tall. They are really, really, really tall. One of them's about to bloom. It's really pretty. I didn't plant it that way, but it's really pretty. When I look out my bedroom window, I can see the blooms. The asparagus is, of course, long since gone. That's an early spring thing, and these are the fronds, or how asparagus looks after the spears are gone. This stuff, I think it's really pretty, kind of ferny looking stuff grows. And then also the ones, some of them are just like this, and then some of them have seeds. So you can see those little tiny like blooms, those will turn into seeds. And then hopefully they'll drop down and start more asparagus. Now I can't resist weeding a little bit. Now this is the terrible one that I've been fighting, but I've got a good hold on it this year if I can just keep it. There's a little bit more. And just the regular run-of-the-mill weeds too. Way back in there, look at that. See that? That's where some has reseeded itself. I don't know, it's so faint. Can you see it? Little tiny asparagus growing. That's what you love to see because that means it's spreading. There's a weird late stalk there that's grew, but I will leave it because it's so small. I will leave it and not harvest it. On this trellis, we have our more established grapevines. You can see some grapes up in there growing. There's some more right there. This one right here, see how teeny tiny those grapes are? This is growing right beside it, but this is a scoopernong, so it'll take it all summer before they get ripe. I really love them. That's my favorite grape. There's a little bit. In this area under the grapevines, I put, again, the Tom onions that lovely subscriber sent us, so I hope they take over this bed too. Here's another one of our blueberry bushes back here. You can see just absolutely loaded with blueberries. Loaded. So great. So great. Right here under them, we planted some calendula and also some bush cucumbers. See some blooms down in there. So those are looking pretty good. They don't need to climb. They will kind of string out a little bit, but they shouldn't do like the ones that were growing up on the trellis. So those are looking great. This lovely lush wall of beans. Doesn't that look beautiful? Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. These are the mother Stallard beans. So Matt and I grew them for the first time last year because, again, a wonderful subscriber sent them, and I wanted to grow them because the bean was pretty. That's just the honest truth. It was just a beautiful bean. It has red swirls in it, burgundy swirls. And also, I said if there was ever a year for us to plant a mother bean, it was last year because Katie and Corey both had babies. So it just turned out to be the best bean. We loved it. Matt and I eat it as a fresh green bean, and we really loved it. The texture was just kind of velvety. It made its own broth. Well, at the end of the season, we realized, I discovered researching online about the history of the bean. It has a really fascinating history. I'll link to a post I wrote about it in the description below. But that it was mostly grown for a dried bean. So people let it dry on the vine. They eat it that way. So me and Matt ate it as a fresh green bean. We just loved it. I would love to try to can some of them this year and see how that does. We didn't can any last year. We just ate them all. So, but they look so beautiful and so lush. And that was another reason we wanted to grow them again. We loved them, but they were really prolific for us too. The tomatoes we have down here, these are pretty tomatoes. They look great. They look better than the ones we usually plant down here, or our tomatoes that are usually down here. They don't have many tomatoes yet though, so I'm hoping they do. Hope they get some. They've got a lot of blooms, but this is the Randy Hooper tomato. But I only see a few tomatoes so far. Hopefully we'll get more. Each summer I find a favorite part of the garden that just draws me to it. For many years, last few years at least, it's been that back part just because it's so lush. But this year it's the front part. The beans just look so lush this year. In this part of the garden we have planted greasy beans and also it's a Grammy bean. It's another one that a subscriber shared with us several years ago. It's kind of like a white half runner, and they just look wonderful. They look so great. Then I have the flowers that I planted with abandon, that I tried to plant with abandon. Didn't get as full as I wanted, but it's still beautiful, and I've just loved it all. It's just so much bounty right here. While the beans are so lush, and one reason I love them so much is because we eat so many beans. It makes up a huge part of our diet, so that's just so wonderful. Even looking at that, I know the fresh green beans are coming, but also the jars of beautiful beans sitting on our pantry shelves. This part of the garden from here on towards the driveway, as the driveway goes down the hill, we've made our giant circle now. It looks really great too, but it's not as lush and full as the green beans and the tomatoes and even the stuff in the back. And it's because this is where we had all of our spring stuff planted. Now our spring garden was kind of a mixture, a wash really. It wasn't as good as it usually is. Onions, wonderful. Radishes, good. Beets didn't do as good as we'd hope. And the lettuce, who can't grow lettuce? But this year we could not grow lettuce. The lettuce we planted way back in the winter in a cold frame, that's the lettuce that has sustained us as far as for our kilt lettuce and salads and things like that. But all the other lettuce that we planted just didn't do no good. Our beets didn't do no good, except the ones that we planted in that cold frame. So a lot of this part right here where I'm standing, we tore out all that spring stuff and gave up on it and then replanted summer things in it. So in this bed right here, we have wonderful Mississippi pink eye peas. We love them. We have those growing. We've got a couple of sugar pumpkins. Just planted a few of them. I've got more dill and I've got more flowers. I try to put flowers everywhere this year. I also have right here in the front is some kale that we actually planted. I can't remember if we planted it last fall or even last spring, which would be even more amazing. But we've just been eating off of it. And there's been a time or two during the summer last year that bugs overtook it with me not paying attention. And I just cut it all back, fed it to the chickens, and then let it come back out. So that's just really amazing when you can have a plant like that and just continue to cut it back and eat off of it. I had a good friend, Garland Davis. I don't know if Garland's still with us because I've not heard from him in a long time, but I hope he is. He grew up in North Carolina, but he lived in Hawaii. After he was in the military, retired from the military, he spent the rest of his life in Hawaii. I hope he's still alive. I shouldn't even say it like that. Anyway, he loved The Blind Pig and the Acorn, my blog, because it reminded him of growing up as a boy. But he would tell me about in Hawaii how he had like pepper plants that was years old and okra plants that was years old because, of course, totally different climate. So I can't do that because the first hard frost would kill them dead as a doornail, as we would say. But the kale, I can kind of do that with it. This is our second planting of squash and zucchini. Well, I say second planting. It's our real planting. At the usual time we would plant things instead of that early stuff I planted back in the back. You can see it's just now beginning to start producing. There's a little squash. In this little area, we've about cleaned out the green onions. That's all that's left right there. We've got some carrots back there in the back, some dill. I planted a few more bush cucumbers up here, just hoping for cucumbers that would, fight the squash bugs. Those will probably be taken over by them too, but I'll just have to try to fight them out. Maybe they'll do better. And in the front here, I planted a few more calendula just for flowers. Matt was using this little portion of the garden for his staging area for building his shed. This is where all the material was sitting. Once that was all finished, he moved all that out. He fixed this place for me, tilled it up, and we put some compost. And so we've planted some okra there on the side. You can see all the way on the left. And that okra, although planted much later, is just as big as that at the big garden. So it's doing good. And I think that's about 10 or 12, something like that, plants, which will be more than enough for us up here. That in the big garden we can share with Granny and with Corey and Austin. Austin loves okra, so that'll be great. Corey can put a lot of it up. Got some winter squash. I planted some watermelons. As is typical for us, they're not doing that great. There's two little bitty ones. I did plant 2 watermelons, a little small variety. They're all small varieties, but these were some a subscriber sent me that's supposed to be even easier to grow, so let's hope. That one does look the best. Planted 2 there, 1 in each corner. This was a cold frame that we had never used before, so we tried it back in the winter, and the top eventually blew off, and we never put it back on because by that time it was getting warmer weather. The beets in here look great. They need to be harvested. There's some of our lettuce hanging on. It's about to bolt out on us. And then I planted some cabbage in here just thinking, well, if it worked, what if the cold frame worked and I could start all my cabbage in here and not have to really worry about them as much as inside? They did grow, and then I just left them. I never did do anything with them. I didn't move them. We'd already planted our cabbage out here and covered it with the row cover. And you can see why we cover it with the row cover. See what happens if we don't. But those do have heads on them, and we will eat them. So you can see down in there, they may be eat alive. But that was just kind of an experiment to see what happened. And even if they get too eat up, who will enjoy them is our chickens. So the cold frame turned raised bed is at the end of our garden area. There's our pile of mushroom compost. That's all that's left this year. And then the blueberries, where I was showing you they were already ripe. You see the road we come up from the big garden and Granny's garden down there. Again, you can see how hers is in full sunshine already and ours is still in shadow. I hope you enjoyed that really huge garden tour. It's amazing when you think about all the stuff that we grow here in the holler, in this end of the holler, thinking about Granny's garden, our gardens, the big garden, and then there's Corey's garden that I didn't even show you. So a common question Matt and I get is from people, they say, what do you do with all that food? Well, we eat it. We eat a lot of it. It makes up a huge part of our diet. Now, we're meat eaters, and we don't have farm animals, so Matt does hunt, so we eat a lot of what he hunts. But in other words, I still go to the grocery store. We don't have, dairy cows and things like that. But the things that we grow make up a huge part of our diet. We love to eat it fresh. This is the best. We're just about to come up on the best eating of the whole year. We've already been enjoying the bounty of the garden, but that'll just continue as the tomatoes start to come in, as the corn starts to come in, the okra, the peas, all that. It'll just be the best eating. But a lot of it we put up. we freeze, we dry, and that's what we eat during the winter months when the gardens are put to bed, put to sleep for those winter months. So we use all of it. We really do. It does seem like a massive amount when I think about everything I've showed you, but when you think about sharing with family and sharing with friends and then putting it up for an entire year, it's not that big when you think about it like that. So it's something, though, that I truly enjoy, and as I said, my love of gardening come from Granny and Pap, and it's really, I've shared this before, but really a great example of the Appalachian culture. But this is just kind of a different insight to it, thinking about, sharing with Granny and sharing with Corey and Austin, but then also Corey and Austin having their own gardens now. That is the way of the families in Appalachia. So Granny used to do all of the gardening, her and Pap, for all of us. Then there come a stage where me and Matt was helping them and doing our own too, kind of. Like I said, we used to have our own garden up here. They had theirs, then we had the big garden. Then as time went by, our gardens got larger. Pap and Granny's got smaller. And then eventually, Granny's unable to do that work now, so Matt and I are doing it for her. We're sharing our food with her. In the same way that eventually Corey and Austin, and I'm sure Katie too, will do the same for us. It will just kind of hand over, and there'll come maybe a point where it's even, and then a point where it tips, like it has with us and Granny, where we do the work and just share the food with her. That'll come for me and Matt too, I'm sure, someday, which is a beautiful thing when you think about the closeness of family. And that's not just in the mountains of Appalachia, of course. That can happen anywhere, and I hope it happens anywhere and everywhere. That would be my wish for the world, that they could have those tight-knit families and that they could grow their food. What a beautiful thing that would be, right? The June garden is beautiful. This is June today when I'm filming this. You may not see it until after. Let me think about it. Yeah, you may be the 1st of July before you see it, but it is beautiful. I have noticed changes, of course. If you're a gardener, you notice like this lushness. In the beginning, there's the promise of everything's so orderly and the plants are real small and you can see all the space around them. And that's beautiful. And there's so much promise in it. Then at the stage it's at now, things are beginning to really get full. Hide spaces on the ground and the bounty starts to come in. In July and August, it'll just get to where it's over. You're just like, it's too much. It almost gets to the point where it's too much. Each of those stages is so beautiful and so wonderful. I've noticed changes too in the air. Of course, we've been having a heat wave. A lot of you have been too, I know that. So there's that. Just this week, I've heard the first jar flies. Right there's one. Almost like I planned it. I didn't. But can you hear it? So if you hear that buzzing sound, that's a jar fly. That's another one. It's the first I've heard them is this week. So that's another stage of summer if you pay attention to those things. There's another one right down there. I've not heard the katydids yet. Jar flies are everywhere today. But I've not heard the katydids yet. Katydids is what we hear at night. So it's not time for them, but maybe even by the time you watch this video, I will have heard them, but I've not heard them yet, so that's another thing I'm listening to. All of those things, though, it gives you a real joy to pay attention to and just to feel like you're closer to your surroundings and you notice them. I know a lot of you live in in areas that is not as rural as mine, but you can still notice things. Even if you're on a busy street, you can notice maybe there's a tree or a potted plant or something that the city's put there. You can notice little things like that. It really makes you... I think it does something for your heart and your mind, though, somehow to pay attention to those things. It takes us out of the busyness of our lives and puts you back on a slower pace, even for just a moment. I think it's really, really helpful to do that. The garden is a beautiful place, though, and I know everyone can't garden like we do. Even folks that used to, like Granny, are no longer able to. There's some people that, time restraints and physical limitations, bodily and locale where they live. But even if you can just pay attention and maybe put a little flower in a vase, start a little lettuce seed in a little pot, anything like that, it just really does something good for you. I hope that you can do that. And I hope that you'll just keep dropping back by. Maybe the next garden tour, I'll be able to share the beautiful tomatoes, all in color. maybe I'll be able to tell you that I've been hearing the katydids at night. They've been singing me to sleep. So I do hope you continue to drop back by. I'm really thankful that you helped me celebrate Appalachia.